Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Madeline Becker and I am a program analyst with the USDA's Food Nutrition Service. I work on the team responsible for writing and implementing policy related to the school meal programs. Today's discussion will focus on unpaid meal charges and the local charge policy requirements. I'll begin today's webinar by providing a quick overview of our recent work around unpaid meal charges. Then I'll give a detailed overview of the charge policy requirement and the policy communication requirements. After that, I'll highlight several best practices we uncovered during our recent examination of unpaid meal charges. I'll end today's webinar by sharing several new resources available on our Unpaid Meal Charges website and by answering your questions. On that note, one housekeeping item. Throughout the presentation, I invite you to submit your questions using the chat feature on the bottom left side of your screen. In addition to answering your questions, we would love to use the Q&A portion of the webinar to share the successful strategies you have used to develop effective meal charge policies in your community. We encourage you to use the chat box to submit best practices your state, district, or school uses to reduce unpaid meal charges so we can share your best practices with other participants. Even if we don't get to all of your questions and best practices today, we'll hold on to them and consider them when updating our best practice resources in the future. Now I'll provide an overview of USDA's recent work to address unpaid meal charges. While this topic is a long-standing priority for the USDA, our work really took off following the passage of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010. Section 143 of the Act required USDA to take a closer look at unpaid meal charges by examining and reporting on the current policies and practices of state agencies and SFAs regarding meal charges and alternate meals. Congress also required USDA to report on the feasibility of establishing national standards for such policies and, if applicable, to make recommendations for implementation. You can find the final report, which we submitted to Congress last summer, on our website. So, where did we find the information for this report? To start, we included questions about charge and alternate meal policies in a multi-year, nationally representative study designed to provide a snapshot of school program operations. The study found that while a majority of SFAs incurred unpaid meal costs, only 35% of the state directors had a state-established meal charge policy or standard practice. A majority of these states allowed SFAs to determine how to handle the situation based on local conditions. Next, in 2014, we issued a request for information about unpaid meal charges. The RFI sought information on a variety of practices related to charge and alternate meal policies and included questions about which school or district officials were involved in charge or alternate meal policy development, whether there were grade level differences in charge or alternate meal procedures, how families were notified of low or negative balances, and whether and how unpaid meal debt was affecting the school's operating budget. We received 462 comments in response to the RFI, 95% of which came from local officials with direct experience managing unpaid meal charges. These responses were crucial in helping us understand the challenges and successes experienced in communities across the nation. If you are among the many school, district, or state officials that sent in a comment, we thank you for your input. Next, in February 2016, we hosted 2 webinars to share the strategies we learned and to collect additional best practices from our webinar participants. We had over 1,500 participants during our 2 webinars, many of whom shared their ideas for addressing unpaid meal charges using the chat feature I encourage you to use during today's presentation. 1 month later, we invited representatives from professional associations and advocacy groups to participate in a roundtable discussion to give a broad national perspective to the challenge of unpaid meal charges. Roundtable participants shared the impact of unpaid meal charges on their key constituencies and offered their ideas for developing effective charge and alternate meal policies. After collecting all of this information, we were ready to issue new guidance and resources to support state agencies, districts, and schools. One piece of this guidance was the local charge policy requirement established in July 2016 through the release of School Programs Policy Memorandum SP 46-2016. The remainder of our webinar will focus on this requirement. I'll start by giving a basic overview of the requirement, then dive into its specific components. No later than July 1st, 2017, all SFAs operating the National School Lunch or School Breakfast Program must have a written policy to address situations where children participating at the reduced price or paid rate do not have money to cover the cost of the meal at the time of the meal service. State agencies and SFAs have discretion in developing the specifics of their policies, which we expect will vary based on local circumstances and resources available to the SFA. Our requirement is simply to develop and communicate a policy. One area of discretion with this requirement is determining the level at which the policy is developed. While our requirement applies to the SFA, state agencies may choose to develop a state-level meal charge policy to be implemented by all SFAs throughout the state. Alternatively, state agencies may choose to outline a general policy, giving SFAs discretion to tailor the policy based on local conditions. In this case, a combination state and SFA level policy is allowable as long as the SFA policy does not contradict the overarching state level policy. If the state agency does not develop a state level policy, SFAs must develop and implement an SFA level policy. We chose to require the policy at the SFA level rather than at the individual school level to prevent inconsistent or varying policies within an SFA. School-level policies could create confusion for families, especially when children transition to a new school or families have students attending different schools within the SFA. However, we do give SFAs discretion to vary the policy based on student grade level. While we leave the policy development to the state and local officials, FNS does have some general recommendations for meal charge policies. We encourage school officials to balance the demands of maintaining the financial viability of their programs with the importance of providing children and teens with adequate nutrition during the school day. During our review of unpaid meal charges, we also heard about the importance of preventing student distress. School food service professionals emphasize the importance of minimizing the embarrassment of children with unpaid meal charges and suggested avoiding actions that clearly identify children as unable to pay for their breakfast or lunch. These comments, along with feedback from education and anti-hunger stakeholders at the national level, demonstrated the importance of highlighting alternative strategies to prevent the stigmatization of children with unpaid meal charges. This chart provides an overview of preferred alternatives to actions that single out and stigmatize children. For example, rather than publicize the names of children with unpaid meal charges or identify them using a hand stamp or other physical marker, we encourage SFAs to communicate privately and directly with adults in the child's household over the telephone or via email. Several school officials who commented on the RFI agreed with this recommendation, citing the benefits of discreet electronic communication from families. In addition, we strongly discourage throwing away a child's meal if they are unable to pay. Instead, SFAs are encouraged to serve children the regular reimbursable meal or to discreetly provide an alternate meal. If students with unpaid meal charges do not receive a meal per the SFA's local policy, we encourage SFAs to notify children of their negative balance before they enter the serving line to prevent the unfortunate situation of taking a child's meal away. To learn more about these and other strategies, please review the Preventing Student Distress section of our Unpaid Meal Charges Best Practice Guide. I'll discuss this resource later in the presentation. Another best practice in the policy development process is giving all stakeholders the opportunity for input. Opening the conversation to include school administrators, food service professionals, social workers, and families helps ensure all ideas are adequately explored and no viable options are overlooked. It is particularly important to include school and district level staff members who will carry out the policy early in the process, as they know the issue well and will bring an important perspective to the conversation. We also recognize that unpaid meal charges may be an early indicator a family is facing a financial setback, which makes coordinating with support service personnel very important. Working with school social workers, nurses, liaisons for homeless, migrant, and runaway students, and other key staff members can help ensure the policy supports children during a potentially challenging time. Based on feedback we received from school officials who responded to the RFI, we know that unpaid meal charges are often accrued by children who are eligible but who are not certified for free meals. Some families may face language or literacy barriers, which may result in their child missing out on meal benefits. Support service personnel may be able to provide assistance for families who may struggle to complete the application independently due to these or other barriers. I'll talk more about reaching these children in a few minutes. Additionally, while FNS does not require formal approval for local meal charge policies, state and local requirements may vary. SFAs should consult with local administrators about any additional requirements for the establishment of an SFA-level meal charge policy, such as local requirements for school board approval. Some SFAs choose to provide children unable to pay for their meal with what's known as an alternate meal. Alternate meals usually involve lower-cost food items when compared to the regular school meal. For example, instead of serving the regular main dish, which could be a chicken pot pie or turkey pepperoni pizza, a child with unpaid meal charges could receive an alternate sandwich entree. Rather than provide alternate meals, FNS encourages SFAs to provide the regular reimbursable meal to any children who wants one. Many SFAs choose to provide all participating children, including those with unpaid meal charges, a regular reimbursable meal. Doing so prevents the embarrassment of children with unpaid meal charges and ensures schools receive some funding for the meal in the form of a federal reimbursement at the reduced price or paid rate. Many SFAs that commented on the RFI agreed with this recommendation and reported that serving alternate meals is not an effective way to address unpaid meal charges. Some emphasize that providing an alternate is costly, as alternate meals are often not reimbursable and require extra staff time to prepare. Other SFAs said they only provide alternate meals when all other efforts have been exhausted. Some SFAs, however, choose to provide children unable to pay for their breakfast or lunch an alternate meal. SFAs opting to provide alternate meals to children unable to pay for the meal are encouraged to include information about alternate meals in their local meal charge policy. To start, FNS recommends explaining when and how alternate meals will be provided and presented. For example, SFAs should explain if alternate meals are offered immediately in lieu of charging or after a child's negative balance dips to a certain level. Some SFAs also limit the number of alternate meals a child will receive, for example, up to 10 per school year. If a limit is in place, this should be explained in the policy. The alternate meal presentation will also vary by SFA and should be included in the policy. Some SFAs serve a cold sack lunch alternate in a brown paper lunch bag. This gives the appearance the child brought a sack lunch from home, helping to reduce stigma. Other SFAs provide a lower-cost hot entree, such as a hamburger or chicken patty sandwich, and also make the alternate available to other students without unpaid meal charges. That way, children unable to pay won't be the only students eating the alternate. And while FNS does not place limits on the types of alternate meals SFAs can offer, we strongly discourage SFAs from serving unappealing alternate meals as a strategy to embarrass children with unpaid meal charges. The FNS requirements that apply to alternate meals will vary depending on the way the SFA chooses to offer them. Reimbursable alternate meals must meet the meal pattern requirements outlined in program regulations. These meals are considered a program food and would be treated like a program food cost. The paid lunch equity, or PLE, requirements would apply to reimbursable alternate meals served to children participating at the paid rate. However, unless an SFA is providing a large number of reimbursable alternate meals at no cost or a very low cost to children participating at the paid rate, FNS would not expect the provision of reimbursable alternate meals to impact the PLE calculation. The cost of providing non-reimbursable alternate meals must be covered using non-federal funds. If the SFA charges a child for a non-reimbursable alternate meal, then the meal is also subject to Smart Snacks requirements and the requirements for revenue from non-program foods. SFA should also include policies regarding the collection of delinquent meal charge debt in the written meal charge policy. In establishing policies regarding the collection of delinquent debt, state agencies and SFA should consider options that will not negatively impact the children involved, but instead focus on the adults responsible for providing funds for meal purchases. State agencies and SFAs are also encouraged to consider whether the benefits of potential collections outweigh the costs incurred to achieve those collections. We also recommend that SFAs establish procedures to determine whether children with delinquent meal charges are eligible for free or reduced price meal benefits when considering their collection efforts. We have developed several checklists state and local officials can use in their efforts to create effective meal charge policies. These checklists may be found in the appendix of our best practice guide, Unpaid Meal Charges, Proven Strategies from Our Nation's Schools, which is available on the FNS Unpaid Meal Charges website. The checklists outline key policy considerations for SFAs, policy communication requirements, recommended topics for delinquent debt policies, and alternate meal policy considerations for SFAs opting to provide alternate meals. This screenshot shows the first 4 questions included in our local meal charge policy considerations checklist. Use of these checklists is completely voluntary, but using the checklist does help to ensure the charge policies address key areas recommended by FNS. Now I'll move into the next part of today's presentation, which is an overview of the policy communication requirements. Whether developed at the state or SFA level, SFAs are responsible for ensuring the policy is provided in writing to all families at the start of each school year and to families with children transferring to the SFA during the school year. There are a variety of ways to meet this requirement, and SFAs may choose the option that works best for them. For instance, SFAs could include the written policy when distributing household applications at the start of each school year, provided applications are distributed to all households. SFAs should use multiple methods to share the policy with families on an ongoing basis throughout the school year. For example, SFAs may include a letter explaining the policy when sending back-to-school packets to families, post the policy on school or district websites, include the policy in print and online versions of student handbooks, and mention the policy in written notices of low or negative account balances. We also encourage SFAs to redistribute the policy the first time the policy is applied to a specific child. SFAs must also provide the written meal charge policy to all school or SFA-level staff members responsible for policy enforcement. This includes food service professionals responsible for collecting payment for meals at the point of service, staff involved in notifying families of low or negative balances, and staff who enforce any other aspects of the meal charge policy. Social workers, nurses, the homeless liaison, and other school staff members assisting children in need should also be informed of the policy. FNS also encourages SFAs to provide information about the policy to principals and other school or district administrators to ensure they are familiar with and supportive of the policy. SFAs should consult with local administrators about any local requirements for the establishment of a policy, such as superintendent or school board approval. As noted, FNS does not require school board approval for meal charge policies, but local requirements may exist in certain communities. Policies developed at the SFA level must be maintained and provided to the state agency during the administrative review. SFAs must also maintain documentation of the methods used to communicate the policy to households and school or SFA level staff responsible for policy enforcement. If a state level policy is implemented, the SFA must maintain records to demonstrate how the policy was implemented and communicated to households by the SFA. Although it is not required, SFAs are encouraged to revise their policies on a regular basis. For example, SFAs may consider revising the policy on an annual or biannual basis. Regularly reviewing the policy, assessing its effectiveness, and incorporating new feedback from all stakeholder groups will allow the policy to evolve to better meet the needs of schools, families, and children. Now I'll provide an overview of several best practices we collected throughout our examination of unpaid meal charges. While SFAs have discretion in developing the specifics of their policies, incorporating these best practices may help SFAs reduce or even prevent unpaid meal charges from students. Before diving into our other best practice strategies, I'd like to highlight an alternative counting and claiming option for eligible low-income schools. The Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, allows qualifying schools to provide breakfast and lunch at no charge to all enrolled children without the burden of collecting household applications to determine eligibility for school meals. Instead, federal reimbursements at CEP schools are based on the percentage of students who would normally be certified for free school meals without an application, such as homeless students and students who receive SNAP benefits. For low-income schools that qualify, CEP is a great option because it reduces the administrative burden, increases access to school breakfast and lunch, and eliminates unpaid meal charges. To learn more about CEP and to see if your school might qualify, please visit the CEP Resource Center on the FNS website. Now we'll move into our other best practice overview, beginning with application outreach. Ensuring children who qualify for free or reduced price school meals submit an application and are properly certified is an important first step in addressing unpaid meal charges. SFAs have developed a variety of strategies to ensure families are aware of the school meal application and the benefits of completing it. SFAs may encourage families to submit their students' application before classes begin to ensure eligible children are certified prior to the first day reimbursable meals are served. The official start of the school year is July 1st, so as long as an application is submitted after this date, it is considered current for the upcoming school year. SFAs may also incorporate application outreach into fall registration or encourage families to apply during open house events or school conferences. Many school officials offer application assistance at these events. For example, some school officials we heard from during our open comment period host a school meals booth during back-to-school night. School employees staffing the booth are available to answer questions and ensure families complete the application correctly. Incorporating school meal outreach into other efforts to reach low-income families, such as outreach for SNAP or Medicaid, can also help SFAs ensure eligible families know the benefits of completing the application. Some schools post flyers and distribute applications throughout the community in job offices, WIC clinics, public libraries, and food pantries to encourage eligible families to apply. When conducting community outreach, schools should provide contact information for a staff member families may call for assistance with the application. Through the RFI, we also heard several creative outreach strategies. One commenter from the Midwest said their district plans to release a video to explain the application process for families that may find it confusing or complicated. The video will be uploaded in English and Spanish and will complement the district's other more traditional outreach efforts. Another way to prevent unpaid meal charges is to ensure families know they can apply for free or reduced price meals at any time during the school year. Children may become eligible for free meals mid-year if the household unit experiences a change in financial circumstances, such as household size going up or income going down. Many low-income families lack sufficient savings, making them extremely vulnerable to what's known as income volatility, or the variation in income level over time. For example, retail workers may see an increase in income over the holidays when overtime is available, but may have their hours cut at other points during the year. To ensure eligible families in need are reached throughout the school year, schools are encouraged to distribute household applications each semester and should make applications available to families at any time as needed. It is also very important for schools to reach out to families experiencing an acute financial setback, such as a job loss or long-term illness, which may result in a change in eligibility status for their child. It's important to note that once a child is certified as eligible for free or reduced price meals, their eligibility for benefits remains in effect for the duration of the school year. Households are not required to report changes in circumstances that would make them ineligible for benefits, though they may voluntarily do so. While most school-aged children will change schools at least once, data from the Department of Education shows that low-income children change schools more often than their peers. School changes can be disruptive to learning, but by ensuring low-income children do not have a break in their access to free or reduced price meals, state and local agencies can support children and families during their transition. To this end, FNS strongly encourages schools to accept a child's former eligibility determination when the student transfers. Given the technology available in most districts, the transfer of student eligibility information can normally be achieved with minimal effort and at little or no cost to the receiving school. In this situation, the receiving school may accept the former school's eligibility determination without incurring liability for the accuracy of the determination. If the child's eligibility status is later determined to be incorrect during an administrative review or as part of verification, then the child's eligibility status would change. If the receiving school does not accept the transferred child's previous eligibility status, determining the child's status should be a priority. Schools can ensure the process moves quickly by including an application in the new child's welcome packet and by emphasizing families must submit a new application to establish their child's eligibility at the new school. You can find more information about reaching transfer students in Policy Memorandum SP 51-2016, Ensuring Year-Long Eligibility in the School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. As a reminder, schools and districts are required to communicate school meals eligibility information, including letters, applications, instructions, notices, and verification materials, to persons with limited English proficiency in a language they can understand. Providing high-quality language assistance can help prevent unpaid meal charges from families who are income eligible, but who may struggle to complete the application independently due to language barriers. FNS recommends identifying household language needs prior to the distribution of school meal applications. To accomplish this, schools may share USDA's I Speak document with parents and guardians during school conferences to determine which language they are most comfortable speaking. The I Speak document can be downloaded for free from the FNS Translated Applications webpage. Once the language has been identified, schools can access free application translations on the FNS website. 49 translations are available for the prototype application for the upcoming school year. This application package includes all of the information provided in the English version, including the letter to households, the application, and other important materials. Finally, we encourage schools to partner with local organizations that work with persons with limited English proficiency. Partnering with advocacy groups, social service agencies, and other community organizations may help schools in their effort to deliver accurate, cost-effective language services. Local organizations may be willing to share written language assistance materials or have bilingual staff available to act as oral interpreters in schools. Schools and communities without access to oral interpreters may consider using telephonic and video conferencing interpretation services. To learn more about the requirement to provide language assistance, I encourage you to review SP 37-2016, Meaningful Access for Persons with Limited English Proficiency in the School Meal Programs, Guidance, and Q&As. Simplifying payment systems, offering multiple payment options, and reminding families before a balance is due can help schools prevent unpaid meal charges. Families must be notified about all payment systems used by the SFA, including any fees associated with specific payment options. Allowing families to add money to their child's account from a computer or mobile device has made payment more convenient for families nationwide, and even families that do not opt to pay using the online system may be able to use the system to check their child's account balance. Encouraging families to regularly check their account balance and track their child's spending can help prevent households from accruing unpaid meal charges. According to some school food service professionals who commented on the RFI, online payment options have helped some schools decrease unpaid meal charges. Many online payment platforms also include a feature families may use to automatically add money to their account when they reach a set dollar amount. Families using these systems may set up a low balance warning to ensure they are notified promptly when a payment is needed, helping to prevent families from accruing debt. And finally, SFAs can work with families to establish repayment plans to make the process of paying back meal charges more manageable. Repayment plans are especially helpful for households just above the threshold for free or reduced price meals and households where the primary income earner is a seasonal worker who may collect more income at certain times of the year. When considering payment plans, SFAs should check with their state agency about any restrictions around how long debt may be carried over, as some state agencies may restrict SFAs from carrying debt into a new school year. Proactively reminding families of their child's low account balance was also consistently cited as a best practice during USDA's examination of unpaid meal charges. When sending payment reminders, we encourage schools to communicate in a variety of ways to ensure the reminder is received and that information is distributed to all families consistently. Schools may send discrete payment notices home with students or send notices directly to a family email account. General payment reminders may also be included in the school newsletter, on the lunch menu, or in communication materials regularly sent to all families. Many schools also use a robocall system to remind families to add money to their child's account. Schools using an online payment system can send automated alerts when a child's balance reaches a low level, such as $5 or $10. When necessary, a trusted school official may reach out to families in person. Unpaid meal charges may be a sign of other challenges facing a family, and having a trusted school official assess the situation firsthand can help the school determine the appropriate response for an individual family. And finally, schools can include all outstanding payments, including fees for books, school uniforms, and unpaid meal charges when sending notices to families. This streamlines communications and helps families keep track of all of their payments. We have included a sample outstanding balance letter, shown here on the slide, and sample robocall scripts in the appendix of our best practice guide. As with the checklist I mentioned earlier, use of these sample materials is completely voluntary, but SFAs and schools are welcome to use either or both as a resource in their efforts to collect outstanding balances from families. Eliminating the reduced price category is another strategy some schools have used to prevent unpaid meal charges from this group of students. At the discretion of the SFA, participating schools may offer meals at no charge to children who would otherwise qualify for reduced price benefits. Schools electing to take advantage of this flexibility will continue to receive the reduced price reimbursement for meals claimed by children certified as eligible for reduced price meals. However, the expenditures associated with covering the reduced price student payments may be funded from the nonprofit school food service account. Lowering or eliminating the reduced price category will lessen or remove any financial barriers to access that this particular group of children might experience and allows SFAs to proactively budget for meal charges that otherwise may come from these children. As such, this flexibility may be helpful in reducing unpaid meal charges. For more information about this option, please see Policy Memorandum SP 17-2014, Discretionary Elimination of Reduced Price Charges in the School Meal Program. Though not a priority option, the final best practice I'll share today is to find alternative funding to offset costs incurred from unpaid meal charges. Districts and schools shared an array of funding options during our open comment period, with wide variation depending on local circumstances. As a reminder, bad debt resulting from unpaid meal charges may not be absorbed by the nonprofit school food service account and must instead be restored using non-federal funds. These funds may come from the school district's general fund, special funding from state or local governments, and other non-federal sources. Many schools have worked with their school board to find a community funding source to make donations to cover the cost of unpaid meal charges. Schools have found success working with the local United Way, Kiwanis Club, school volunteer organizations, the PTA, and other local charities. Some schools have created a random acts of kindness fund. These funds, often provided by families with children attending the school, support a general lunch account that may be tapped by children unable to pay for their meal. Other schools have found success holding fundraisers to support an angel fund for children with unpaid meal charges. For school fundraising ideas, I encourage you to check out USDA's Team Nutrition resources, which include a booklet of healthy fundraising ideas for schools. We've included a link to the Team Nutrition webpage in our best practice guide. At the end of the school year, some schools invite families certified for paid meals with excess funds in their child's account to donate to a general lunch fund. A few dollars from many families, especially those with graduating seniors who will be closing their accounts, can help to cover the cost of meals charged by children throughout the following year. While alternative funding options can help supplement other efforts to prevent or alleviate unpaid meal charges, we do not view alternative funding as a long-term solution for schools. SFAs using alternative funding sources should also continue to pursue other strategies, such as connecting all eligible students with an application and making payment more convenient for families, in their efforts to address unpaid meal charges. In addition, when using an alternative funding source, it is important for SFAs and schools to develop a policy or standard practice for distribution to ensure the funds are shared equitably between schools and among children in need. If an SFA chooses to use an alternative funding option, school food service professionals should never be expected to solicit funds or organize fundraisers, as this is beyond the scope of their regular job duties. In addition, teachers, food service professionals, cashiers, and other school staff members should never be expected to pay for children's meals. You can find all of the resources I mentioned today, along with many others, on our Unpaid Meal Charges website. This website includes all of our unpaid meal charges policy guidance, including a recently updated Q&A document that addresses common questions we've received on the topic. You'll also find several best practice resources on the website, including the comprehensive best practice guide that I mentioned several times throughout the presentation. We plan to release an updated version of the guide in the coming weeks, so please check back regularly. The website also includes the webinar we hosted last February, slide decks for other FNS presentations on this topic, and a number of other useful links. We plan to post the slides and notes for this webinar, as well as a recording of the webinar, in the coming weeks. Okay, so it looks like we've reached about the top of the hour here, so we'll wrap up at this time. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar will be available on our website in the coming weeks. And in the meantime, we encourage you to visit our website and view our other unpaid meal charges resources. Thank you again for your participation today and for your interest in this important topic.